Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Old Glory Games podcast. I am back. My name is Kyle, and I'm with my partner in crime, Greg. And we are here to talk about the NIL in our Old Glory Games podcast latest episode. And Greg, we covered NIL before, and I'm sure many people may not know exactly what that means. If you can see us on the screen on YouTube, it says name, image, and likeness. It is a whole thing. It's complicated. But we want to really get into the minutia of how it's changed sports, and particularly college football and college basketball. And so welcome to this episode. And Greg, I'm going to let you kick this off and feel free to talk about what it is. But if you have any question of what it is, we have part one of this. We'll leave a link below. So Greg, don't feel like you have to go through the whole definition of it in terms of what it all is, because it is fairly complicated when you figure out the regulations and the state options and all that sort of thing. But what are your thoughts when you hear NIL today in November of 2025?
Well, good evening, Kyle. As you said, this is something that we discussed some time ago in an earlier podcast. So I will start off first by mentioning how NIL got started. So as we mentioned in the previous episode discussing NIL, it began with the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit in 2009. So Ed O'Bannon was a former UCLA basketball player that sued the NCAA after seeing his likeness used in a video game without compensation. So this case argued that athletes should be paid for use of their NIL, and that laid the groundwork for future legal challenges. Another case, NCAA versus Austin in 2021, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the NCAA could not limit education-related benefits for athletes. And in July of 2021, the NCAA adopted an interim policy allowing athletes to profit from NIL. So to me, NIL is such a seismic shift in major college sports. And you and I have talked offline about this. I'm kind of torn as far as whether I think these guys and gals should be getting paid. I feel like they should, maybe get paid something, a stipend or some sort of compensation for what they do. They help generate, I would say, multi-millions, if not billions of dollars. I don't know that I'm fine with them making the money that they're making. So NIL is really driving the way major college sports work. And a little later, we'll talk about the transfer portal, and in ways they work hand in hand. So I did some checking around as far as prepping for this particular podcast. And in 2025-26, NCAA Division I schools are expected to spend over $2.2 billion with a B on NIL.
Wow.
Yeah. And revenue sharing compensation for athletes. So the breakdown is like this. NCAA revenue sharing will amount to about $1.75 billion, or about 78% of the total. Commercial NIL deals will be estimated to total around $292 million, or about 13% of the total. And then NIL collectives will amount to about $205 million, or 9%. So under the new NCAA revenue sharing model, each Division I school can pay athletes up to $20.5 million annually, with that cap expected to rise to $32 million over the next decade. So no matter how you slice it, that's a lot of money. And it is really motivating these athletes as far as the decisions they make about which college they're going to. I'm not saying none of these guys and gals are going to particular schools because it's a winning program. But a lot of these kids are going to schools based upon how much NIL money they can make. And that concerns me on many different levels, because why are you involved in sports to begin with? Is it about the money? Because most of us that were athletes of some regard throughout our lives, we never made it to that level where we could make money playing sports. So for us, it was about camaraderie. It was about teamwork. It was about sportsmanship. It was about winning. It was about learning life lessons that you could carry on even after you're done playing your respective sports. It was never about how much money we can make, because we knew that we weren't likely going to go pro in whatever sport we played. So that wasn't a motivating factor. That's all changed now. And when you think about college sports, and I mentioned this before, all three of my children were college athletes. Now, NIL was not really a factor because they played Division II and also NAIA. So that really wasn't a factor as far as when they participated. But still, it was something that, was out there, especially for my youngest two kids. And, in watching them, it was so enjoyable just watching them compete and watching them grow, not only as an athlete, but as a young man or woman. And I'm not saying that that's completely changed now that we have NIL, but again, the motivations are just so different.
So different.
And it's not only different from, I guess, a personal perspective, but these coaches have to operate their programs completely different from what they used to. And I think that's a big reason why you see a lot of these legendary coaches retire. Roy Williams, yep. Coach K, Tony Bennett. What's the coach from Villanova? His name escapes me, but he's another one that was a top flight coach that decided to move on because of the changes and the rapid changes that we've seen in college athletics. So, and the turnover of their programs is just so radical. You don't know from year to year who's going to be on the team. And now, and I think you've seen it, a lot of these major college sports programs have general managers to help deal with NIL and the transfer portal. And it's just mind-boggling how things have changed to deal with this phenomenon. I know a lot of people think, well, these kids should be able to make as much money as they possibly can. Okay, I can listen to that type of argument, but I think what may get lost in the shuffle a little bit is the integrity of the college game. Are these guys and gals still amateurs? If they're getting paid essentially for playing their respective sport, well, I don't think they are. And, what part does all of that play in the grand scheme of things? Now, I will say that in non-revenue sports, I don't know that NIL makes nearly the impact that it does for revenue sports. So let's take, for example, field hockey. Now, I don't know of any professional field hockey leagues. There may be some, but I think for the kids that play sports like that, I think their motivations are still the same. because, I'm not saying they can't make NIL money, but I doubt they have the opportunities like basketball and football players do. So their motivations are probably going to be about the same. I'm going to go to college and play the sport that I love. I'm going to compete at the highest level. I'm going to get a good education. And when I'm done with my career, I'm going to move on to a career in something other than the sport I played in college. So I don't know that part of it has changed for athletes like that. But for athletes that play revenue sports, I mean, their motivations, and again, I'm not saying that all of them have changed to the point where it's all about money. But if you look at, and I try to find amounts as far as how much these kids can make, and it's kind of hard to find exact numbers. It's a contract based thing. So you may see folks in different groups say, oh, well, this kid's making 500,000 and this kid's making 300,000. It's hard to nail down exact amounts, but let's say your top athletes can make six figures. I think that's fair. So
easy.
They're making that kind of money, and their aspirations are likely to play professionally in their respective sports. So they're making this NIL money, and these are 18 and 19, 20-year-old kids who previously may or may not have had the opportunity to see that much money. And, to see that much money or to have in their possession that much money. So now you've got this aspect that, if they're well grounded and they have, good people around them that can advise them and, steer them in the right direction as far as how to handle all this, that's great. A lot of these kids don't have that luxury. So now it's just one more thing that they have to try to deal with and navigate. And it also may give them false expectations about what they can do at the next level. Because at the end of the day, let's say, Johnny Doe gets a $600,000 NIL deal, and, he gets that money and, he has an okay season. And then from there, once his college career is over with and he doesn't get drafted and he doesn't catch on as a free agent, now where is he? Now,
hope he saved his money.
Yeah, exactly. These kids that have pro aspirations, unfortunately, many of them don't prioritize getting a college degree. So you're in this position, you didn't catch on in the pros, you didn't get drafted, and how much of that money have you saved from NIL deals? Well, hopefully you saved some of it, but whether you have or whether you haven't, that money's not going to last forever, and it's going to be a lot tougher if you don't have a degree to figure out what the next chapter of your life is going to look like. So those challenges remain, unfortunately, for these kids. And I think that, years ago, and this came to me a while ago to highlight how the NCAA was more academics focused. So freshmen were not allowed to play varsity basketball or football until like 1972. And when we talked about Pete Maravich, we're like, imagine how many points Pete Maravich could have scored in his college career if he had been allowed to play his freshman year.
Well, yeah.
That record would be absolutely unbreakable if he had played varsity his freshman year. So the NCAA did that mainly to make sure these young kids adjusted to college academics and college life in general. So the NCAA was more focused on these kids getting an education than they are now. It's all about money at this point, and I don't think the NCAA is trying to hide it anymore. And that's sad to me because to me, college and college sports not only should help these kids prepare for the next level of whatever sport they're playing, it should also help prepare them for life. And when you're focusing totally on making money, I think these kids are getting cheated at a certain level. I want to add one more thing and I'll kick it back over to you. So I was thinking about, okay, you've got these guys and gals that could potentially make six figures as far as NIL money. It's like, well, okay, what are they going to do with this money? Are they going to be responsible? Now, I do know that one young man that plays for the University of North Carolina, their basketball team, he unfortunately was injured. He broke his forearm, I think, in practice a day or two ago. So he's going to be out for a while. But I read that he used his NIL money to buy the Ben and Jerry's there in Chapel Hill. Now that's smart.
Yeah.
But, you know, for every Seth Trimble, I'm guessing that there are, excuse me, many, many more kids that aren't as smart with their NIL money. So I'm like, well, the NCAA has so many, 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 many rules. Why can't they institute a rule that makes it mandatory for these kids that get NIL deals? Make it mandatory for them to take some sort of, money management, life skills type class to at least help them be able to manage this windfall that they have and teach them basic life skills. How to open a checking account, how to write a check, how to invest your money, how to fill out a tax return, things that will be very useful for them moving forward, whether they go to the pros or not. I think that's one of the little things the NCAA can do to help these kids, because right now, money is driving a lot of these decisions that are made around NIL, from the schools to the teams to the athletes. So to me, some sort of, order or some sort of something should be offered to at least help these kids manage not only the money, but the expectations and the things that will come up next in their lives, whether they make it to the pros or not. So what do you think about that? I'll turn it back to you. I know that was a lot, kind of all over the place, but just off the top of my head, thoughts about the NIL and what I think about it.
No, I mean, it's great. I mean, what you said there, and the fact that I like how you brought it to Maravich in the back in the day when amateurism was actually cherished. I like the fact you talked about non-paid or non-profitable sports such as field hockey, where the motivation is probably exactly the same because they're in there to play field hockey for the love of the game, right? They're there for that. They're not there. I think it's fair to say they're not there to get a fat contract somewhere. They're there for the sport, and they have every intention of getting a degree so they can live their life, because field hockey is not going to pay their bills going forward, more than likely. And so I like that whole framing of it. But to me, I think the craziness about this is that it's just so open to corruption and the hypocrisy. This kind of just came to me, actually. This is off cuff here. But the whole thing about the NC2A, and I'm not going to call anybody out. I can name some names, but I'm not. During the era where you couldn't even give a person a ride across campus like Coach Wade did for University of Maryland, opening up a big investigation and put them on probation. He literally gave a player a ride across campus, that sort of thing, to where we have now. We have people like this. I'm going to show you this video that I haven't actually watched it yet, but this is a tweet on X. It says NIL has destroyed college sports. NIL has destroyed team first concept. NIL will go down as the worst decision by NCAA history, and that's saying something. The most amazing part of the story is that Zach Calizzo is 25 years old and in his 7th year of college. Now, I read that. Now, if you can't see this video, I recommend you guys check this out on the YouTube channel, or just go to Twitter or X and check this out.
Video that has UK fans asking, is this what more than $1 million gets you? Backup quarterback Zach Calzada responded to fan criticism by flashing cash on social media. The video is going viral on social media. Backup quarterback Zach Calzada's response to fan Garrett shows him flashing cash and telling the critic to stop hating and go get you some money, Garrett. The controversy reached Kentucky Sports Radio as Calzada's critic called in.
You know, fans have blown it up and fans are upset. Do you at all regret putting it out there, or do you think it needed to be out there?
I think it needed to be out there to show the state of this football program, that we'd bring somebody so immature into our program. And from what I've seen, and even you guys, I feel like a lot of people are on my side, that it's embarrassing that he would even do this to a general fan that says one thing to him.
KSR's host didn't hold back.
What kind of an idiot goes and gets $20,000 in cash, carries it around, takes it into his apartment, and then flaunts it on video? What kind of an idiot does that?
My biggest picture related to football is it's almost 95% of bad looks for Calzada and not UK.
University of Kentucky graduate Mario Maitland disagrees.
Quarterback is like the face of the team. And like for him to do that, it makes it look even worse on the Kentucky football program as a whole.
Longtime fan Bill Freeman has advice for the 7th-year quarterback.
And if I was able to tell him one thing, I would tell him that what you do behind the scenes when nobody is looking is more important than what you do in front of a camera.
A member of UK Athletics told me it's very aware of the video and planned to talk with Calzada again this morning. They did say he knows that it's unbecoming of a student athlete at UK. Dave Baker, WKYT.
I'll let you see the rest of that. Greg, could you hear that? I wasn't sure, but the audio was coming through.
Oh, yeah, I could hear it. And the one thing that popped in my mind as I watched that was, aren't a lot of these kids entitled enough? I mean,
thank you.
I mean,
and no offense to anybody listening to Kentucky. I know I might get some hate mail, but it's Kentucky. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, and the point that the individual that posted about how bad NIL is for college sports, and we talked about this before. Yes, destroyed the team first concept, and we talked about this before. It turns into, this is all about money. It's all about me. It's all about how much money I can make, not about how much I can develop, how I can help the team win. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't athletes that still have that attitude. I'm sure there are plenty that do, and maybe more have that attitude than not. But so many more of these kids, and again, they're 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. So they're still developing as far as, emotional maturity is concerned. So as you can see from that video, that particular kid, not so much. And, I just, am very concerned about what this is going to do to kids that aren't equipped to handle this, emotionally, and what their motivations are. To me, NIL and the transfer portal together, they are very bad for college sports. College sports, as we know it, they're gone. And again, lower level, like Division II and NAIA, you can probably get a better feel for what sports used to be, if you watch sports at that level. But revenue sports, Division One, it's totally changed. Even non-revenue sports, you probably get a better feel for what college sports used to be about. But the marquee players are the Division One revenue sports athletes, and it's just changed everything. And again, it's just very concerning for me, and it's just changed everything, and not necessarily for the better.
100% agree. And I want to just jump in here to the NIL. I want to get into the transfer portal first. But I want to talk about, kind of wrap this up, because you said that is hand in hand, transfer portal with the NIL. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not going to read all of this, but this is basically the complexity of how the NIL actually works. And essentially, a student athlete at a school may sign an agreement with a third party, and it's where the corruption comes in. That's what I was trying to talk about earlier, that they can get a third party deal, then they can hire an agent, and once you hire an agent, then it's all off, right? And then the school must ensure that the NIL activity complies with state law, more corruption potentiality, conference policy, NCAA policy, which I was saying before, Greg, was that before all this stuff happened, there was already corruption. Look, I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan, so I know about corruption. I know about Ohio State having their corruption. I know about Florida State having their corruptions because it affected my schools directly. Even Florida had corruption back in the day from just giving kids money or giving them rides across campus or whatever it may be.
SMU.
Now you take oh my gosh, we should do a whole show just on SMU. I mean, they killed that program for what they did. They probably deserved it because they were out of control. SMU was out of control. And thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, perfect example. And so you see on the screen here, all this stuff here, fair market value, and you have disclosures. And not to mention, not every state has NIL. So if the state doesn't have NIL, it defaults to the NCAA in terms of how those policies are met. And so I'm going to say, before I get into transfer portal, I'm going to kind of segue in there by talking about a school that I know very, very well, and that's the University of Miami. University of Miami, traditionally speaking, has had great talent in South Florida, no problem. And the problem with Miami was other issues with 2 stints of probation over the past 25 years. And that kind of put them out of the global national stage. They were losing recruits to schools all over the place. They're coming in and grabbing the talent. Miami wasn't putting the money commitment into the program. And so now we have something called the transfer portal. And so we have a person who's our quarterback right now who got, I think, over $1 million. He came over from Georgia. He came over from Georgia, and he's doing the same thing he did then, and he's overpaid, and he's taking money away from the kids that could get that money. And then you have pressure there. So basically you're running an NFL team, essentially. Do you run the backup quarterback who could maybe do a little better, but he's not on scholarship, or he's on scholarship and not able to play because the boosters who are giving all this NIL money want to see their money go to the player that they're giving money to. See, the way it works is there's boosters in the top 5 organizations, and say top 5, I mean the conferences like the ACC, SEC, Big Ten, Pac-10, who else is there out there?
Big 12, like the Power 5 conferences, I think.
Power 5 conference, correct. They have an advantage over other schools because they can pool money together. I think Texas pulled $40 million for this past season. I think Miami essentially has what they consider an unlimited amount of money. What they're calling it is that they have boosters who say, we don't care. And that gives an unfair advantage to other schools. And then the whole academia kind of just it becomes, they should stop calling it college football. They should just call it semi-pro football, because it is not an amateur deal anymore, and it's creating culture like that gentleman there flashing cash, blinging, and he's playing. I mean, I'm not trying to diss Kentucky, but I mean, you're trying to build a program, and you're just going to have a lot of animosity if you're not going to do well, because you have your quarterback who doesn't care because he's got his money. He's going to do what he needs to do. And in fact, if he's smart enough, he may not ever want to go pro. So he doesn't care if he does well because he's already been paid. And I like the fact that you said, Greg, that they should have some sort of stipulation where the money, I'm not sure if you suggested this, but something should be done where maybe the money and I don't know if you said this or not, but I'm saying this, should be put into some sort of trust, contingent upon maybe graduation, credit hours, something, and then it can be put out to you in a way that's fair and healthy, because giving kids this kind of money outright is ridiculous. Maybe within the trust, you can say, okay, the board of trustees, I know I have $2 million for this particular time at the school. I know the trust says I can't use the money. However, there could be a stipulation to say, if you're using it for these purposes, maybe you can have exceptions. You can draw it up any way you want for charity work, anything you want, or maybe it could be for starting a business, legitimacy. Maybe the board can come in and say, okay, we'll make an exception in this case. There needs to be something done, because I'm telling you, the corruption potentiality is absolutely out of control. So I'm going to toss it back to you, Greg, and let us know what the transfer portal is again. And two things. Let us know what it is. Well, actually, three things. What is it? How's it different than what it was before? And how does it tie in with this NIL and any problems it may cause there as well?
Okay, so first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with the idea that you had as far as stipulations for getting that NIL money to help these kids better manage it, whether some of it goes into trust or whatever it is. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Some type of guardrails that can help them manage it better than they might otherwise. So yeah, we're going to segue into the transfer portal. And basically today, as a college athlete, you are free to transfer basically wherever you want without penalty, more or less. Now, you may ask, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, not too long ago, the rule was that if you were going to transfer, you had to sit out a season unless you transferred to a school that was like at a lower division level. Like, let's say I'm going to Carolina and I want to transfer and play the very next season. Well, if I transfer to Belmont Abbey, I'd be able to play the next season. But if I wanted to transfer to NC State, I'd have to sit out a year. So now that requirement is gone. And I know that there are times when there are, hardship situations, and I understand that. But I don't think there are any restrictions or any that I'm aware of to keep these kids from transferring wherever they want. They declare themselves eligible for the portal. And sometimes right after the season's over with. And, and basically for whatever reason, I'm not getting enough playing time. I don't like the coach. I can make more NIL money someplace else. Whatever the reasons are, these kids are free to transfer pretty much wherever they want now. And again, that really hampers continuity. It hampers what these coaches can do as far as the way they coach and structure these teams. So to give you a little bit of an idea as to how much these kids move around now. So the NCAA transfer portal, launched in October 2018, allowed athletes to transfer without sitting out a year, which, as you can imagine, dramatically increased mobility. You've got kids moving all over the place now. So I was curious about the numbers of athletes that have played at 4 different schools or more during their careers. As of 2024, more than 100 NCAA Division I men's basketball players have played at 4 or more schools. Let me repeat that. 4.
This is basketball.
More.
It's a roster of about 12 people. 12 people roster.
Yeah, 4 or more schools. since the transfer portal was introduced in 2018. That's a lot of moving around. And, like I said before, and there was a situation, I think, recently, and I'll go back to talking about Carolina. I think there was a young man that played for them a few years ago that transferred to go play basically at his hometown school of Minnesota because I think he had some sort of illness in his family and he needed to be closer to his family. Something like that, I have absolutely no issues with. But for these kids to be able to just transfer however many times they want, I just think that's very troubling. And again, if you are moving around just because I can make more money over here, what does that say about your true motivations as an athlete? And not just that, I get it, kids want to play, but before you had all of this mobility, you basically had to suck it up and try harder to try to crack the rotation.
Right.
Kids don't have to do that anymore. So I think that speaks to their fortitude. If you go to the pros, that's probably one of the things they're going to look at. Well, how easily is this kid just going to give up and want to quit when things get tough? And they may look at this as an indicator. So you're just making it so much easier for kids to just kind of give up on where they committed to go. Well, I'll just pack up and go someplace else. Well, yeah, you can do that. But, what kind of character traits are you building by doing that? And I'm not putting the blame all on the kids because the rules let them do this.
Yeah,
and if they don't have the right inner circle or counsel, available to them to advise them on what they should do and what they shouldn't do, I mean, they're just going to jump up and do it. And unfortunately, some of the parents are the main problems. You've got all of these social media platforms where the parents are running their mouths about, oh, well, my kid. And anytime I think about parents and running their mouths, I immediately think of LeVar Ball. He is the king of all that, unfortunately. But yeah, there's so Elliot Cadeau, he played point guard for the Tar Heels. I think as recently as last season. And I think his mother, and I'll be very nice, was very vocal on social media about, the school, the team, how much her son played. And I get it. Every parent, can get frustrated sometimes about how much their child plays and how they're being used. I get it. But, going on social media and putting the school on blast or teammates on blast, that just makes it tougher, not only for the team, but your child. And, they're under enough pressure as it is. So you have all of these things going on that may be undercurrents along with, why these kids are moving around. But, to me, the transfer portal, it may sound like a great idea, but think about what that's doing to all of these mid-major schools. Where do you think colleges, major college programs are looking to rebuild their rosters? A lot of times they're looking at mid-major schools. Oh, well, I'm going to go look at Butler, or I'm going to look at Belmont, or I'm going to look at, and not Belmont Abbey. There's a Belmont University, I think, in Nashville,
yeah, I know.
Division I. Yeah. So, I'm going to look at Mount St. Mary's, or I'm going to look at Gonzaga, and I'm going to target, their best player or one of their best players. And if they jump to the portal, I'm going to try to get that kid to come play for my team. So, with the mid majors, their best players may look at it like, well, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I want to go to a school where I can get more exposure. I want to go to a school where I can make more NIL dollars. So the major college teams, they're the beneficiaries of that. And some of these mid-major programs are the losers. And
Yep.
I think mid-major college programs, as we know it, I think they're going to suffer greatly because of the transfer portal rules. Now, on the flip side, some of those programs can benefit because if you have major programs where kids are highly touted and regarded going to those programs, if they don't get the playing time or they don't get the opportunity for exposure like they thought, they may think, well, I'll go to a mid-major where I'm going to be BMOC, I'm going to get all the attention, and that's going to work out better for me as far as my prospects, whether they be NIL or the pros or whatever it is. So it can work both ways, but I think mid-major schools, I think they're probably going to suffer the most because of this. And again, going back to the freedom of these kids, and again, they're immature, a lot of them. So they may make decisions, very abruptly and go someplace and they may regret it. And I think that's why you see so many of them.
Yeah,
like every season they're playing for a different school. So this looks more and more like free agency in pro sports. It's like, okay, well,
that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to go to the highest bidder. I'm going to get courted by all these different schools. And there's not much difference between what's going on with NIL and the transfer portal and what's going on in pro sports. And again, it's like, well, I don't see the amateurism anymore. Where is it? Well, I think it's gone at that level. But I'll say this, and I'll turn it over to you. I feel like just for the sake of the integrity of the game and the continuity of these teams, because you can see like complete turnover from year to year for a lot of these programs, and it just makes it hard. I think there should be some kind of limit. I mean, things like this, there's got to be some kind of limit. I don't think it's good for the kids, and I don't think it's good for the sport in general. To me, transfers should be hardship based if you want to go and play at the same level, at the same division level the following season. I mentioned the young man that had basically a medical hardship in his family. To me, for something like that, you should be able to go to another school and play there the next year. Other than that, you should get one transfer, one. And then that's it. So to me, if you do that, there would be a lot more thought that would be put into these decisions as far as transferring. And I can accept, so let's say, and unfortunately, a lot of these kids have financial hardships. They come from low-income families, they're struggling. And if there's a situation where, okay, I'm playing at, this university and I'm making this much NIL money, but my family's in a real big bind and I really need to go someplace else to try to make more. I know that's probably very hypothetical because, again, we just mentioned that some of these kids are making like six figures. But let's say there's a situation like that where there's a real financial hardship within that person's family. Like, let's say somebody's terminally ill and they don't have insurance or just whatever. To me, in a situation like that, then work with the athlete so they can go someplace where they can more or less help take care of their family, especially if there's no other means of support. But other than that, To me, you should just get one shot at a transfer. And then after that, make the best of that situation. And I know that sounds hard, but I'm sorry. Letting these kids just transfer all over the place, I don't think, in general, I don't think it's good for the sport. And in some ways, it's not good for the athletes. So what are your thoughts on all of those things? I know I covered quite a bit, but just off the top of my head, that's how I feel about it.
Sorry, my mic was muted. So that was good, and I'm going to comment on some things because I was putting down some notes here. The first thing that comes to mind about people who transfer all the time is lack of competition. And one of the things that I did for over 23 or 4 years following college football was college recruiting. And back in the day, before we had this, you had people who were, let's say they were a 3-star recruit, they were under recruited in terms of people. They might get a few mid-level conferences asking them, but for the most part, unless it's a local school, they're not getting a call from Ohio State or Florida State if they're, let's say, in Arkansas. They're going to get Arkansas State, they're going to get local schools. And so what they'll do is they'll go to a program and they'll ask the coach, okay, well, it's many things for people who want to go to college. Is it location? Am I going to play? Many different factors. Playing close to home, of course. And what they'll do is they'll say one school, okay, I can go to this school here and play. Unfortunately, there are 5 guys at that position and they're recruiting me, which means if I'm not good enough, I'm not going to play. And so they don't go there. Or let's say they do go and they feel they're better. Maybe they're a 4-star recruit or even the 5-star recruit. And they go and they find out that they're not as good as they thought they were. And they're not playing as much. Because like we have a guy in Miami named JoJo Trader, hasn't sniffed the field yet. It's probably the most talented player on the team. I think it's a 5-star or 4-star blue chip. Hasn't sniffed the field, and Miami needs someone to catch the ball out there, but he can't. I guarantee you, JoJo Trader will transfer this year because of those reasons. And so it's a roundabout way of saying competition is damaging the sport and the player, like the guy Petey in Remember the Titans when they were trying to coddle him, and the coach, this is from the movie Remember the Titans, the player was walked out on his team, and one of the coaches came up and said, well, it's okay, let him play whatever. And said, no, you are killing these kids. You cannot be soft on these kids. They have to be men and take accountability for their actions. And so I like the fact that you like that to limit that. That's very, very important. Another thing I was going to say is that this turnover just leads to, if you're going to go to one place for money, or let me stop. If you're going to go somewhere for hardship or because playing time or because you want to go close to home, maybe you're a Maryland kid, you're out in Oregon, it didn't work out just because, it's 18 years old, you want to come back home. That's one thing. But if you're going somewhere because of money, and you mentioned free agency, then that leads to even more corruption. On top of corruption, government, state, NCAA, player under the cover, boosters. Come on, man, boosters. That's crazy. And here's the overarching point. The point I want to make here. The overarching point is this: the hypocrisy with the NCAA when they were saying for all these years, "Oh, you have to be an amateur. You can't get paid because for the love of the game." And all these reasons are right. All these reasons are virtuous. But under the table, they were doing stuff that I can't even mention here live because it would be, this is a family program. And so, and what they would do all that stuff on the surface, and they would say, well, we can't have a playoff system because it goes too far into the season and they're going to miss exams. Well, that's only for Division I teams. Division I AA and Division II didn't care. They were playing way into late in the season beyond. So that was the hypocrisy. And so all these things they were trying to say, that's protecting the players from the integrity of the game, from making sure they go to class, make sure they get their finals, and all of this sort of thing, is 15 times worse now with the corruption in terms of what these players are exposed to now. And I know a person firsthand, I don't want to call him out Greg, I'll tell you off camera who this person is, but it's a member very, very close to me who is a coach at a mid-major, assistant coach at a mid-major university. And the stories he's telling, man, Greg, I'm telling you, dude, I'm surprised he's still coaching because he came in prior to all this, and now he's seeing the transitions of what's happening, of what Coach K, I'm sure, saw, and what these other coaches that left the game and said, you know what, the guy from Alabama, the coach there, he had something really big to say about that. But yeah, I'll let you comment on Saban, but I want to just kind of cover a few more points here that I was jotting down on top of all that. I mentioned the scams and the tampering and the lack of oversight can just cause all kinds of crap with agents and regulations, and it undermines the public faith of these universities. And some of these universities are government state-run schools; they're not private, so there's a public interest here as well. Not to mention the college sport product is going to go down because of all of this. You're not going to get the best players on the field to have the best entertainment, and ultimately, I think that may hurt the game and maybe make them look and say, "Okay, this game isn't as good as it used to be. Let's turn it back because they're not making as much money." Mental health crises. People who are on social media, exposing this stuff. If you're worried about other people accepting you and being validated, or if let's say you got an NIL deal for $600,000 with a person on your team who's maybe he's the water boy, but he had a viral hot video because he kicked a field goal 65 yards, and now he's getting 700 money. You know what I'm saying? And now he's jealous because this player who doesn't even play is making more money. You know what I mean? What does that do to the locker room? And what does it do to your own self-esteem when the water boy, who's the backup kicker, has a viral video and he's making more money than you are? Not to mention threatens cultural traditions and sports appeal. We kind of talked about that as well. And uneven talent distribution. It kills excitement. I kind of talked about that a little bit, but the quality of the game. And the combo of NIL and the transfer portal creates a situation of chaos and instability. And like you said, Greg, it mentions free agency, so I won't rehash that. And yeah, so it's just a total cluster across the board. I'm gonna kick it back to you, Greg, because last time you said something that was really good. I'm not sure if you're prepared to say now, but you had a good, I guess, model. And maybe if you don't have it here, maybe we'll get that from you again and we'll post it, of how things could line up in a perfect world. And you have some really, really good ideas. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to kind of high level, if you can remember any of the things you were saying, I thought your idea was really, really good that needs to be considered when they finally do come and visit this at some point in the future, because it's not going to work the way it is now, in my opinion.
So, unfortunately, I don't recall exactly what that was. Maybe as I sit here and toss it around in my brain, maybe it'll come back to me. So
it was a lot. It was good though. I think I got a chat somewhere. Maybe I can find it and pull it up. Cause we talk, we talk online with ourselves on private messenger.
Yeah, a lot.
And yeah. I think I probably can find it. Give me a couple of hours. I can dig
see if you can dig it up. Yeah. I'd be interested to see what I said. So, Jay Wright was the coach that I could not think of that coached Villanova all those years and won a national championship. He basically got out for a lot of the same reasons these other old school coaches got out. The game and how you coach it has changed so much. And if you're an old school coach, it's very difficult to coach the way things are in college sports now. You mentioned Nick Saban. I've never been a fan of Nick Saban, but he's an old school guy. And he made a comment about, transfer portal and NIL and the motivation of a lot of these athletes today. I think he had some athletes come in for a visit or something like that. And his wife, I believe, made a comment to him. And I feel like she was just astounded at the attitudes of these kids. And she's like, these kids aren't about how can you help me be better? How can I help the program? It's all about what are you going to do for me? How much money can I make? It's all, me instead of we. And to me, we is what team sports are all about. So with this whole transfer portal NIL situation, we're not going to be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube on this. And you have to kind of look at, what groups are being adversely impacted the most by this. You talked about the pressure these kids are under. Well, they're under more pressure now because not only do you have NIL money floating around out there, but the advent of sports gambling, it's insane. How big sports gambling has gotten. And you see these stories about these college athletes being threatened online because, they missed a potential game-winning field goal or they missed a last-second shot, and people betting on the games lost money. I'm like, come on. These are 18, 19-year-old teenage kids, and you're putting all of that pressure on them. And you talked about, mental health and mental wellness. Well, that doesn't do either one any good. And, it's a sad situation when these kids are just put under all of this pressure more than they should be. It's a game at the end of the day. I get it. It's big business. It's big money. But at the end of the day, it's a game. Life goes on tomorrow. But there's so much money involved. And you talked about more corruption. And I immediately thought about the point shaving scandals that we've had over the years. And, if these kids, they're being exposed to making a little money here and there, well, what if these unscrupulous types come to them and say, well, kid, whatever you're making, you can make twice as much if you just, stub your toe, or if you just accidentally miss a pass or make a turnover late in the game. I don't want you to lose the game. Just, make sure, the spread is such to where, I can make money. It's happened. And my concern, or one of my many concerns, is that it could happen even more now because even more money is on the line as far as NIL is concerned. And
they're betting on everything.
Yes. It doesn't matter what it is. Cornhole. I'm sure you could bet on that if you wanted to. To me, it's a sad state of affairs. College sports, for good or for bad, just isn't what it used to be. And I know, some people that listen to us are like, you're just two grumpy old dudes that, don't want to change. And a lot of that's probably true. Yes. You're not wrong if you say that, but
it's a badge of honor.
Yes, I consider it that way too. But, some things just look good on the surface, but if you don't put a whole lot of thought into how you implement it, it can just spin out of control very quickly. And NIL and the transfer portal, I know it sounded like a good idea at the time. Oh yeah, well, coaches can move around as much as they want. Why don't we let the kids just move around however much they want? Well, to me, those are two different situations. To me, they're apples and oranges. I think the bottom line with all of this is when you're looking at the good of the individual athlete and the good of the game, both should be woven together. One shouldn't be polar opposites from one another. They should be woven together or run parallel with each other. And to me, NIL and the transfer portal can force those two things to be as far apart as they possibly can be. I wonder a lot now how many kids really care about winning championships these days. I'm sure most of them still want to do that when they get to the college level. But what's more important, winning a championship or making money, winning a championship or going in the first round of the draft of your respective sports? What's more important, money or the relationships you form with your teammates, lifelong friends, coaches that you see 30 years later and still call coach and still value their input and appreciating them for helping shape you into the young man or young woman, you wind up becoming. What's more important? And to me, NIL and the transfer portal, they, in a lot of ways, they go hand in hand. And to me, for things like that, it's not helping. It's a detriment. And the NCAA, I mean, they've basically let the horse out of the barn at this particular point in time. For an organization that had rules against putting cream cheese on bagels at team sponsored events, to have that kind of minutia as far as like rules and guidelines, for them not to have more guardrails in place about this sort of thing. When you're talking about millions and billions of dollars as opposed to $5 for a tub of cream cheese. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous when you think about it that way. But at the end of the day, if you really care about the well-being of the college athlete, you really need to rethink about these things. Isn't an education important at all? I mean, you got to wonder, because putting the slant towards making as much money as you can make at the college level, you've got the rest of your life to make as much money as you can make as far as going pro in that sport or finding a career somewhere else. College, when you get to college, you should be able to enjoy the college experience itself. And I argue that is going to be a lot harder to do when you're purely there to make money and not soak in the experience of all the rest of it. And I think that's going to be one of the many aspects that are lost as a result of NIL and the transfer portal. So, yeah, but if you can dig up what I said about that, now I'm wondering what I said. But, you and I have talked about this a lot offline as to what's wrong with all of this. And, I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it in the days and weeks and months to come. But, to me, NIL and the transfer portal, such as it is today, if you weigh it out, is it better or worse for college sports? I say worse. To me, there's got to be a better way to do it. I don't have all the answers, but the way things are now and the risks, I think the risks outweigh the benefits. And I'm sure there are people like, well, what are you talking about? These kids can make a bunch of money and what's wrong with that? Well, we've talked about some of the things and some of the dangers of them being able to make that kind of money and all of the unintended consequences that go along with it. But, again, I long for the days of yesteryear when it was a lot simpler. But yeah, and I think the NCAA was reaching out to like Congress or something to help them manage this monster. And I'm like, well, you should have thought about that before you did it. But, maybe something can be done. And I hope it's not a matter of something being done because something dramatically and drastically awful has happened as a result.
Well, that's what's going to be, I think. Or the product's going to go down to the point where they're going to feel like they need to fix it because the product isn't as good as it used to be. But if people are used to what they see, then they won't care that the product's gone down. Look at the NBA; they don't care; it's still making money.
No, that's a prime example. Yeah, it's a rotten product, but nobody cares. Everybody's making money. And the NFL, exactly. The same way. It's not nearly as good as it used to be, but everybody's making a bunch of money. And if that's what you're used to seeing, doesn't bother you.
Doesn't bother you because you don't have a frame of reference, which is why this channel exists. So maybe maybe this channel or this podcast will be the catalyst for reform.
That sounds like a mission to me. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have more to add there on the NIL. I think we covered it pretty well. Hopefully, we won't have to cover this in a year from now. Or maybe we will. Maybe we will have to cover it in a year, which means there's some progress that's been made.
Yeah, I'm good. I think we covered it fairly well, and I think it was good that we followed up from what we discussed some months ago. And I think this is an evolving thing. So we'll probably talk about it again in another few months or so, because I'm sure something else is going to develop that even we may not have anticipated. That's something that needs to be addressed. So more to come on it.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that we're pretty much due for LeBron video soon. So.
Oh yeah. It all circles back to LeBron.
It all goes back to him.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, great, man. Thanks. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And we are now, I said, we are on Spotify now officially, as that's actually our broadcast service now. So should be out more places now and more consistent. Our last provider was, that's a sidebar discussion, but we had to get rid of them. They were going crazy with they went from something like, I don't know, $20 a month to like $400 a year or something like that. I was like, okay, no, we're not gonna do that. And Spotify is free, so we're using that. So anyway, guys, I hope you guys like this. And on behalf of Greg and myself and the Old Glory Games podcast, thank you so much, guys. And we will see you in the next one.
Take care. Thank you.